the one, the only, Ben Sion.
Good afternoon and welcome to Yeshiva YouTube, just off it, as we continue Masechet Gittin, Daf Mem Ches, number 48. Very exciting. We're finishing the first volume of Masechet Gittin in our scroll. Moving on to the second volume, starting a new parak on Izakin, the fifth parak of Masechet Gittin. I believe in Izakin talks a lot about the Chorban, because I got it about the Chorban, which happens to fall out during the 3 weeks, ironically. Or coincidentally. A lot of people would like to imagine. Start from the bottom. Zayin and Beis. We're talking about Machlokas and Riyochan and Reish Lakish about whether Kinyan Peiros is tantamount to Kinyan Haguf. If you acquire the Peiros, so someone sells his field just so you could eat the fruits. Does that mean you have ownership over the land or not? According to Rabbi Yochanan, you do. According to Reish Lakish, you don't. This happens to be one of the times we do pasuk like Reish Lakish. Probably explain in the of Ben Sion that it's not a complete psak like Reish Lakish. There is places where we do follow the opinion of Rabbi Yochanan, or we should follow the opinion of Rabbi Yochanan on halacha. Let's start from the bottom of Men Zayin and Beis. Va'azul Tamayu, Rabbi Yochanan and Reish Lakish follow their own reasoning elsewhere. The Itmar, Hamocher Sadeyu Bizman Shayovel Noeg Tav Mem Chem Aleph. If you sell your field when Yovel applied, on Yovel, a field goes back to its owners. On the 50th year of the Shemitah cycle, it goes back to its owners, which basically means when you sell a field to somebody else, you're essentially selling the payros of the field for however many years is left until Yovel, because he's going to get the field back on Yovel. Rabbi Yochanan Omer, maybe V'koreh, those fruits, right, the Bikurim every year you bring, and you can recite the Parsha, because owning the payros, those fruits, for whatever year is going to own it before you have to give it back on Yovel, is like you own it. Rishak Jamar maybe you bring, but you don't read the pasuk, right? It's only a chim derabanan to bring. You're not chayim derais, so therefore you don't read kriyas parsha because it's not yours. Yochanan maybe v'koreh kinyan peros kinyan gufdami. It belongs to. Rishak Jamar maybe koreh kinyan peros lav kinyan gufdami. It's like you don't own it. V'sricha. Why do we have to say this twice, right? They had a machlokas one time when you sell a field for the fruits, and also when you sell a field during Yovel. Why do you have to have two machlokas? So the Gemara says it's necessary. Tzricha did mar bahi kamar Reish Lakish. The chikanachis adaita the pirakanachis. When the Reish Lakish say kinyan peros lav kinyan of dami, that's when you just sell a fruit for its. You explicitly say, "I'm just selling you the payroll." So hach, when you sell a field until Yovel, dadaita the gufei kanachis, he plans on getting the whole field. Ema modi the Rabbi Yochanan, he would admit that during those years he acquires the ground, which would have an afkamina that if he brings bikurim, he's maybe v'koreh. Beis mar baha. If we said it in the other case, baha kam Rabbi Yochanan. That's Rabbi Yochanan said he's kinyan peros is kinyan guf dami. Aval baha ema model Reish Lakish. But I would say when he just sells the fruits, maybe he's model Reish Lakish kinyan peros lav kinyan guf dami. Kamashma in both cases, Rabbi Yochanan holds kinyan peros is kinyan guf. Reish Lakish says not. Sricha. Tashma. Let's try to bring a proof to who's right. Rabbi Yochanan Reish Lakish. Hakona Ilan V'karko. You buy, this is a mission in Maseches, I think Bikurim. Hakona Ilan V'karko. You buy one tree, and you buy its surrounding land, maybe V'koreh. On the fruits that come from that tree, you bring Bikurim and you read the Parsha. The Chiv Bikurim Daraisa. Seems to be a source of support for Rabbi Yochanan. So, because here, Yovel applies. If Yovel applies, all you acquired is the fruits. That Mishnah is talking about when Yovel doesn't apply anymore. Tashma, another Mishnah in Bikurim. If you just buy two trees, you don't buy the land in between them, maybe they ain't no koreh. Everyone agrees you've only bought the fruits. You didn't buy any of the land. Ha shlosha, if you buy three trees, so anytime you buy three trees, we assume you bought the land also, maybe the koreh. So you see like Rabbi Yochanan, it's talking about the time the Yovel is noeg. Even though you only bought the fruits, so you would bring bikurim and read the parsha. Achanami, the Gemara answers b'zman sheni Yovel noeg. That Mishnah is also talking about when Yovel doesn't apply. V'hashid amar Rav Chisda, and now that Rav Chisda said machlokes b'Yovel sheni, aval b'Yovel rishon divrei akol maybe v'koreh. Rav Chisda says the machlokes when you sell your field is only when Yovel sheni, right? When Yovel first started, right? Even though the 50th year came, technically the halacha is it's supposed to go back, it's supposed to return the field, but no one did it until it became a custom that they would do it. So the Yovel Sheni, the second Yovel, after 100 years happened, people started to return it. And therefore, if this is the Yovel region, after the first 50 years, when they first had the Beis HaMikdash, right, where Shlomo Melech built the first Beis HaMikdash, the land, the first 50 years didn't go back. Everyone agrees in that case, maybe V'koreh, because it wasn't planning on going there. Because in that case, it was Kinyan Peres, Kinyan Gufdam, even according to Rish Lakish. So, Lo Kash, Habi Yol Rishon, Habi Yol Vashen. So, with the knowledge of Chisda's dictum, we can answer the Mishnayos and Bikurim, even according to Rish Lakish. You don't have to say it's talking about the Yovel is not knowing. It's talking about the Yovel is knowing when it was the first Yovel, where the land didn't go back. And therefore, maybe V'koreh, the second Yovel, and onward, the land did go back, so therefore, like Rish Lakish says, Kinyan Peres, Lav, Kinyan Gufdam, you would not be Koreh. Lema K'tanai, say the Machlokes, Rish Lakish and Rabbi Yochanan, is similar Machlokes between Tanoim. Minayin Lokeach, the Brayta says, Minayin Lokeach Sodem Aviv. You purchase a field from your father, Hegdisha, you're makdish the field, you donate to the Beis HaMikdash, and then your father dies. How do you know you treat it like a stei achuza? A stei achuza, right, in ancestral land that you give to the Beis HaMikdash. So if the Beis HaMikdash sells it, so when Yovel comes, it does not go back to you, it goes to the Kohanim. That's the halacha. So what about you bought it from your father, right? You didn't inherit it, you bought it from your father, and then he died. How do you know it's like an ancestral land? That again, if Beis HaMikdash sells it, it goes to the Kohanim, not back to you on Yovel. Pasuk, when it's talking about it, says, right, the only field that goes back to you is something that you bought. But ancestral land, this field, right, before he bought it from his father, he was going to inherit it. So therefore, the laws are different by that. Divrei Yehuda Shimon. That's Yehuda Shimon's opinion. Rameir Omer, Minayin Lokeach Stadei Me Aviv, Umei Saviv. You buy a field from your father, and then before your makdish, your father dies. Then your makdish. Minayin Shtei Levanav Stei Achuza. How do you know it's like a stei achuza? Again, ancestral land that you do not get it back at Yovel. Tamalomar imet stei miksasa shalom stei achuzaso. So the sheina stei achuza yatzu shehi stei achuza. This is a stei achuza. He inherited it before he was makdish it. Seems the Gemara is assuming at this point Rabbi Meir excludes the other case, and Rabbi Yehuda Shimon excludes Rabbi Meir's case. Bilar Yehuda Shimon meis aviv achach gdisha lo sricha kra. Right, according to Rabbi Yehuda Shimon, if your father dies and then you're makdish it, you bought it from your father and he died, that doesn't need a pasuk. My la bakmil. What are they arguing about? The Rameir Savar Kinyan Peres Kinyan Gufdam. Right, when you buy it from your father, right? Of course, it's supposed to go back at Yovel. Right, you're only buying the peros, but he holds it's like you acquire the guf. Baha b'misas aviv hudlo yaris v'lo midi. And therefore, when you bought it from your father, you didn't just own the peros; you own the entire land. And when your father died, you didn't own anything, right? When you bought the land, you didn't just buy the payrolls from your father. You bought the entire land, and therefore you're not inheriting anything. If your father died and your matish is sarachra, Pasuk has to tell you, no, we still treat it like ancestral land, and you do not get it back. If Beis HaMikdash sells it to Kohanim, the Kohanim get it. If the Beis HaMikdash sells it, it goes to the Kohanim in Yovel and not back to you. Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi Shimon, Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi Shimon hold the opposite. They would hold like Rish Lakish. Therefore, b'misas aviv hashdahu dekayaris. Right? When you buy it from your father, all you're buying is the payros. When your father dies, now you're inheriting the land. Right? You're inheriting it because you're inheriting the goof. And therefore, if your father dies and then you're makdish it, your father dies and then you're makdish it, lo shricha kra. If your father were to die and then you're makdish the field, you don't need a pasuk for that, because once your father dies, you bought it from your father dies, and then you're makdish the field. So that's obvious, right? It's Yerusha, stay achuz. The Torah doesn't have to tell me that. The Yechidus are across. Therefore, where is the Chiddush of the Torah? The first case that Rabbi Yehuda should talk about, first you buy it, then you're makdish, and then your father dies. Who the Itzarif is needed in that case to tell me it's stay achuza and not stay miknaso. Amar Rav Nachman Yitzchak la'olam emolach. Rav Nachman Yitzchak deflects what the Gemara is trying to do over here. La'olam emolach ba'alma kasai Rabbi Yehuda Rishimon kin peres kin of dami. Everyone holds. Rabbi Yehuda Rishimon and Rameir all hold kin peres kin of dami. So why do they argue? Rabbi Shimon, they had two drashas they learned out of the pasuk. Right? The whole drasha is forced because it's a double language. The Torah is saying, right? The pasuk says, "Right? If we know it's miknaso, if it's a field that you purchased, it's not a field that you inherited. So why the double language? So that's why they darshan, whatever the case they darshan. But Rabbi Yehuda Shimon tell you a second drasha because it could have just said, right? My mistay asher lo mistay achuzasa. Not only the case where you actually inherit it, but even the case where you don't actually inherit it, right? There's right, where you bought it from your father. The first case where you bought it from your father, then you're makdish, and then your father dies, where you would have inherited is also included in this. So therefore, both cases are included, and everyone holds kinyan peres kinyan guftam like Rabbi Yochanan, which is difficult because the Gemara here assumes like everyone holds like Rabbi Yochanan, even though we'll see the psak is not like Rabbi Yochanan. Amar of Yosef, you loved Amar of Yochanan kinyan peres kinyan guftam lo matzi yadav v'raglav beis hamedrash. He was forced to say kinyan peres kinyan guftam because we'll see a statement that Rabbi Yochanan made would not work out, wouldn't make any sense unless he held kinyan peres kinyan guftam. He wouldn't have found his hands in his feet. Brothers who their father dies, they divide up the inheritance, right? So they're considered. Do we consider breira? If we say breira, it means that each of them, whatever portion they divide up, belongs to them. That's exactly what the father meant to give to them. But we don't say that. We say it like they bought from each other, and therefore, every time Yovel comes, they have to go and reapportion it. If you held that kinyan peres is not like owning the land. We never find a case where you'd have bikurim del raisa, because every time you inherit, right, at least somewhere down the line there were multiple sons, right? Unless there was one son, all the way back to Yeshua ben Nun, so then there was no question. It's an inheritance. You own the kinyan aguf from your father, and you bring bikurim. Otherwise, it's just like kinyan peros, because at Yovel you have to reapportion the lands. You only hold the peros. So therefore, Rabbi Yochanan had to hold kinyan peros kinyan guf dami. Therefore, since you hold kinyan peros kinyan guf dami, so therefore, even though it's lakucha saying machzir Yovel, you give it back at Yovel. Still, because of kinyan peros kinyan guf dami, you would be maybe v'koreh. Amar Rava Kral Masisa Messiah le Reish Lakish. Rava says there's a pasuk and a brisa which support Reish Lakish that kinyan peros is lav kinyan of them. Kra, the pasuk says, the top of Mem Chedem Beis, the mispar shnei tvuos yimacher lach. This is a pasuk talking about someone selling a field, right? Selling a field before Yovel, and the way the Torah describes it is the number of years of produce, of harvests, right? Yimacher lach. That's the amount he sold it for you. For this 3 years before Yovel, he sold you 3 harvests. Now, why does it describe selling the field as 3 harvests? You sold 3 years of the land. So you see what? When you sell the land, you only sell for the payros. Kinyan payros, lav kinyan guf. You didn't own the land. Masnisa, a brayso, the tanya b'chor notel b'shnayim b'stei achozeres la'aviv b'yova. Right? Let's say your father sells a field, and then he dies. Right, so the children get the land back. Not only they get the land back, but it's considered to be pishnayim, a bechor. There's 4 sons, so the bechor gets a double portion. He gets 2/5 of the inheritance. The other 3/5 are a portion among the 3 other brothers. So there's a halacha that you only get pishnayim, double portion, on roy and not on muchsa, on muchsak and not on roy, something which he has right now, and not something which is owed to him. So normally a field, when it goes back to Yovel, something which is owed back to the father. But if you hold like Reish Lakish, that kinyan peros is lav kinyan of dami, it means even though the father sold the field, that he only sold the peros. He didn't sell the gufa karka, and therefore the Bechor, when they get the field back on Yobel, he already had the field the whole time when he inherited it from his father, and therefore he would get Pishnayim in the field. Amar Rabbi Naktinan Baal b'nichse isha sarich harsha, because of Reish Lakish seemingly, right? Kinyan Peras Lav Kinyan Gufdami. The property that a woman brings into the marriage is called Nichse Maluk. He eats the payroll, she gets the Gufa Karka. So because Kinyan Peras Lav Kinyan Gufdami, he doesn't own the Karka. If he wants to advocate in court for his wife, he needs Harsha. He needs his wife to write that he's power of attorney, basically. He has to have power of attorney. Otherwise, he doesn't have the ability. Only a litigant can make claims in court. He's not a litigant, it doesn't belong to him. Below Amr, and the Gemara qualifies. That's only where he didn't. I'm going to translate it the way I think this is how you read. Nachis apiri means he didn't start consuming the payrolls. Because he's involved, right? He could be involved on the fruits, right? Because he started eating them. So therefore, he has a claim. Even if his wife didn't make him power of attorney, he can be a litigant as far as the Gufa Karka also. This is not the way our scroll explains it. I'll just tell you the way our scroll explains it, just for simplicity's sake. They say, Nachis Apiri means basically, not that he started consuming the payrolls, but that the court case surrounded the payrolls. If the court case partially surrounded the payrolls, a claim on the payrolls, so therefore, since it can make a claim on the payrolls, it can make a claim on the Gufa Karka also. That's the way our scroll explains it. The first way explanation is the way I believe the explanation is, and I'll tell you why I believe that and what the ramifications are. In Enod Ben Sion, we have finished the fourth parak. Let's start the fifth parak. Hanizakin. It's one of the more famous parakim in Maseches Gittin. Hanizakin Shamal had beidis. This is some general rules. We'll get to Maseches Baba Kama. If someone's mazik someone, you can be mazik someone with your property, or you can be mazik someone with your goof, with your body. There's two different types of hezek. Either way, when you collect from the person's property, you collect from his best land, right? You're owed $300. So there's a small piece of land worth $300, really fertile. And then there's a big piece of land that's also worth $300, but it's pretty infertile. It's going to be hard to sell a property like that. Idis is more valuable, even though they're worth equivalent to the same thing. But the Idis is just easier to sell, to buy and sell. It's more liquid, so therefore Nizakin, the Torah says Meitav said they have Meitav karma. You pay him the best; he gets to collect from the Idis. Well, Balchov v'Beininus, a Balchov, if someone's owed money, right, and he's able to collect from the person's, he defaults on the loan. You collect from his Beinonis is his middle land. Land is divided into three, considered very fertile, average, and infertile. So you collect from Beinonis. Ksuvas Isha b'Ziboris. A woman who collects Ksuva, she collects from the inferior fields. Meaning, if he has fields that are good, okay, and not so good, she has to collect from the not so good field. Rameir says they're masakin even Ksuvas Isha collect from the average fields. And Nifrayin Menchasim Mishubadim Makom Sheish Nechasim B'nei Chorin. You can't collect from encumbered property, right? Even though you write in, someone lends someone money and they write achrayas, right? That if you default on the loan, I can collect not just from you, but anyone you sell your property from the time after the loan. If he has his own land, you can't collect from the debtor from the land that was sold, that he sold to somebody else. You have to collect from the debtor's land first, even if it's inferior land. And even though you have a right to Beinonis, but if he has land, even though the person he sold the land to has Beinonis, and the person, the debtor has Ziboris, you have to collect the Ziboris from him. Any from Ella Mina Ziboris. Right. You're allowed to collect from, if someone owes you, father owes you money, he dies, his inheritors, the orphans, they owe you money. They only owe you money if there's real estate, through real estate, mido raisa. But when you collect from them, you can only collect from ziboris. All these things are takanas. We'll see the takanas. The Gemara will explain why they're takanas. Some of them seem to be mido raisa. We'll explain why they're takanas. This is a halacha that if somebody stole a piece of land, right? He stole a piece of land, and then he sold it to you. You didn't know it was stolen, right? You improved the land, you ate the payros, and then the person comes and makes a claim. He goes into Beis Din, and he proves this person stole my land from me. So you're the third party. You bought it from the stolen person. You didn't know that it was stolen, right? So you obviously have a claim on the person. You can go, right? you spent money on this land, so you have a claim, and you all spend money also to work the land, to grow the things in the land, so you can still go back to the original owner and demand payment, right? But all you can demand payment for is uh, is the expenses that you put in. You can't demand the payrolls that you ate, and you also can't demand the value that the land is now worth, the enhanced value, right? Only the expenses, right? If you fix up a house, right, you renovate a house, you can double the price of the house, even though you only put in, right, it was $1 million house, you renovate it, worth $2 million, even though you'll put in $200,000 of work, right? You don't get that back. This is all tikkun olam. Not only you should be able to get it back, but tikkun olam they didn't allow you to get back. They also made a takana that a woman, right, after her husband dies, or after her husband dies, she, as long as she hasn't collected her ksuba, she's entitled to mazonos. She has to be nourished and fed by the orphans, and also the state of the father is responsible to feed the unmarried daughters. But they cannot collect these chovos from encumbered properties, meaning land that was sold by the husband. They can only collect it from the land that he has right now. All these things are because tikkun olam. Someone who finds a mitzvah, we'll see, you find a mitzvah, and the person who says, hey, that's my mitzvah, it was $100. He says, I only found $50. Right? So normally that's motive and mixes. They said no, even though normally motive mixes a chayav shul with the raisa. Here they said we're not mashpiyin also because of tikkun olam. The word is tikkun olam. Back to the first halacha, nizakin shaman and ve'idis. Right? It seems like that tikkun olam is going on in the entire mishnah. May tikkun olam the raisa here. You don't need to takana the rabbana. I mean the raisa you collect collect from idis from the best land of siv. Meitav sadeo meitav karmel yishalim. Amar Abaye is a little sricha el rishmal. The fact that it says tikkun olam is our mission follows the opinion of Rishmal. The Amar midoraisa benidizak shamina. Kamashmal tikkun olam shamina b'damazik. There's a machlokas Rishmal and Rabbi Akiva. Let's look at it. My Rabbi Yishmael. What is Rabbi Yishmael's opinion? Tana midas adeo mitav karmel yishalim. Meitav sadeo shal nizak. Meitav karmel shal nizak. Dear Rabbi Yishmael. Rabbi Akiva Amar lebal kosav el legavos benazikin minaidis v'kol v'chomer lehekdesh. It's famous machlokas in many places in Shas. Let's say my animal goes into your field and destroys it, or I let a fire and it goes and destroys your field. So how do you evaluate how much you have to pay or not? Right? Let's say it destroyed a good field, right? An idis field, or destroyed a poor field. So according to Rabbi Akiva, which makes the more sense logically, the mazik, right? The person who let his animal out, who wasn't careful with his fire, he ruined the other person's field. You have to pay idis, right? You have to pay the best land, the most liquid type of land, the best land, the most fertile type of land. The value is the same, but you get to collect the most fertile type of land. According to Rabbi Shmuel, it doesn't have to do with the person who caused the damage, the person that was damaged. The person that was damaged, you measure it with the nizak, you measure it by his property, right? We'll see in a second what exactly this means. The Gemara tries to analyze exactly what Shmuel means. But for today, all that's important is that really, midoraisa, you evaluate the damage through what happened to the nizak, whatever property the nizak was damaged. And because with tikkun olam, it makes more sense. Tikkun olam, like Rabbi Akiva, the mazik shaymina, and therefore they flipped it, even according to Shmuel, and said that we evaluate through the property of the mazik, and therefore he pays always with his best property. Even according to Rabbi Shmuel, midrabanan, he pays with his best property. We'll explain this Malchus Rabbi Shmuel and Rabbi Akiva tomorrow. I hope you enjoyed today's share. Stay tuned for Ian with Ben Sion, where I talk about the maskana. Is kinyan peros kinyan uvdami, or is it lav kinyan uvdami? The Gemara, I believe, in Mesechus Yevamos, Naf Lamed Zayin, says we paskin like Rish Lakish, kinyan peros lav kinyan uvdami. I believe the Gemara has a caveat to that, and I will tell you about it in Ian with Ben Sion coming up next.